Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
We welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Wednesday, December 16th. I'm Gary Stevens. Open line following the 11 o'clock news, but we do have a guest in this segment. That guest is the superintendent of Zeeland Public Schools. He's on the other end of our Zoom connection, Cal DeKuiper. Cal, good morning. Welcome back to WHTC.
Well, good morning. You know, I listened to you on the way in. I took a little break for a couple other Zoom meetings and just picked back up. So it's good background for me here too.
Yeah, glad you are with us this morning. Quick question. We've been reporting that West Ottawa Public Schools has now 6 finalists for its soon to be vacant superintendent position. And Tom Martin has been there for 9 years. How long have you been at Zeeland?
It's got to be 8 or 9, I think, because I started in January. So I think I'm just starting 9.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom and I have known each other for a long time as athletic directors way back in the day, kind of working our way through.
Now, the reason why I was asking is now that, Tom is stepping down, you're sort of second on seniority behind Brian Davis and Holland in terms of superintendents being at their position the longest.
Sure. And, as we go through this, Brian and I talk to each other a lot, rely on each other for advice. And Tom Tenbrink over at Jennison is another great voice, a lot of experience in history in the area. So talk to him as well.
That leads me to a related point. And by the way, you can join in the conversation as well. 395-1450, 395-1450. We saw a run, I would say, over the last decade, perhaps, and that's just off the top of my head, decade there, Cal, where superintendents only last maybe 3, 4, or 5 years, and then it's time to retire. It's time to move on. Are we swinging the pendulum back the other way when we're starting to get some more continuity with school leadership? You, of course, being there for, going
Sure.
on 9 years. Brian, of course, Dave Tebow's been in a while at Hamilton. We're starting to see some seniority in Saugatuck with Tim Travis, Jim Gray, Fenville. Great Annis. Jim Great Annis has got a few years there too as now. So we're starting to see some longevity with you leaders.
It depends a lot on the community and the board quite often. And if superintendents and school boards are engaged with your community and listening and working together and heading in a direction that as a community we want to go, there's longevity in a superintendent. And if you're in transitional communities or you're trying to figure out where do we want to go, or you have really difficult decisions, sometimes after a really tough decision, then it just doesn't work to stay. So there are some superintendents that are experts at that. My preference is to be in a community where the community just loves its school. We care deeply. We talk to the superintendent. I get more emails in a day than you can imagine, and supportive. And here's what we think. That's a good place to be. And if we listen and work together, I think there's a lot of longevity.
Looking at enrollment numbers, West Ottawa is the largest district still, a little over 6,500. The last nose count back in October. That's about 400 more than Zeeland, from what I understand.
Yeah, we're at about 6,300, and we actually kind of thought we'd be giving West Ottawa a little bit of a run there. We kid each other about it, but as we headed into these COVID times with people choosing homeschool and remote learning, we actually lost our trail there. We had been on about a 25-year run here in Zeeland of having increased enrollment every year for 25. And I think Byron Center was one of the only other schools that had happened. And with the number of people homeschooling, we lost that trail. We'll have to start it over again. But we're hoping that with a light at the end of the tunnel and we see this, that the enrollment will start to go back up again.
We're going to pose this question to Cal DeKuiper of Zeeland. We posed it yesterday to Brian Davis of Holland. Chalkbeat Detroit, that's a nonprofit watchdog news organization, took some of the numbers of of Michigan's enrollment, according to the report, Michigan's enrollment fell by 53,200 students this fall. That's nearly double the enrollment decline of 10 years ago, which was the last year of the Great Recession. But one of the conclusions that came up in that particular report, Cal, was this. The net decline was unexpected. State officials have no process to account for them. Michigan does not have the ability to find thousands of students who may not be getting any education during the pandemic, and there is no statewide plan to get them educated. Right. Have you sort of been aware of maybe some students, as I would say, fall through the cracks, especially during this COVID-19 outbreak that, where are they? We don't know.
Yeah, we're very concerned about this, and that is a legitimate study and a concern. The superintendents in the area have been talking about this, and one of my mentors was Mike Oakes back in the day, and he showed me, and I've not been able to find this report, so don't hold me to it, but he showed me a report back in the day that the average school dropout and the student that we lose as a school system stays within a 7-mile radius. So we are failing our local community as well. So we take this job so seriously. And, one of the things I've always been a little concerned about is that there are two kinds of homeschoolers. There are those that are just excellent. They come in ahead of grade level. They really do the job. And there's another kind of homeschooling called legalized truancy. And if you sign the paper, you're on your own. And that, I don't know if that's good or bad. People have their points on that, but those are the students that we sometimes lose track of. And in this pandemic, those students who did not return to school, we put a whole team on that, trying to go find them and see where they are. Well, if they moved and they don't enroll in another school, we don't have a place to forward their records to. So right now, there are too many students that are in limbo that we're trying to find that may not be findable until they re-enroll.
And part of the thing that the report says is that right now there's no way to catalog how many students are really homeschooling and not involved with any district. And right. Some say, well, that's a little surprising. I say no, because when you do a nose count, there's a reason that you have to do a nose count. The reason being, well, altruistically, we would think, we want to make sure the kids get their education. And that's good. But you and I know, in a practical sense or a little bit of a cynical sense, the nose count is to make sure the districts get per pupil money from Lansing. That's why the counts are there. And maybe that's why, because homeschool learners aren't getting any money from Lansing to help pay for the education. They have to foot the bill themselves.
Yeah, well, I always hope that it is altruistic. We're a school, and of course, my job is to run it. It's running a business. But all those folks that are in front of kids are teaching them, and then it's our funding source. So it's kind of a mix. Schools are also a way to try to keep track of where all the students are. So when they move from one state to another state, just to make sure we actually know where people are in community to community, that kids don't get lost. And that is how kids sometimes get lost. So we like to think we're in the life-saving business too sometimes. And I'm a little concerned about that in this pandemic. So Dr. Davis has brought a couple of us together here, and he's really a go-getter for kids in this situation, and trying to bring a group of superintendents. How can we study this and figure out how to find them, and then also how to catch them up?
395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for Zeeland School Superintendent Cal DeKuiper, he'll be happy to answer us. And Cal's been gracious to appear with us sort of on a moment's notice situation when stories do break involving his district. But we're trying to get Cal into the regular rotation here on Talk of the Town, and we appreciate his time joining us as well. Let me touch base on something that ended last November 20th. Registration for the second semester at Zeeland Zeeland Public Schools. Where are we standing now that maybe you have an idea who's doing what once school resumes in full after the first of the year.
Yeah, in fact, we sure do. That's a really good topic to talk through, as it helps us figure out how does our community feel about the pandemic and remote learning and the safety systems that are in place. So we have about 250 students who are in remote learning at the high school and 250 students who are in remote learning K-5. So let me change that to high school. It'd be 612. So 250 K-5, 250 students, 612. What was interesting is about 50 students asked in the high school to go from in-person to remote. So we are going to increase the number of students in remote learning at the high school, but at the elementary level, 50 students requested to come back to in-person. So pretty stable numbers in the big picture, only about 1 out of 6 changed, and we just continue to try to offer to our parents what they want. Those students who wanted to come back in the elementary level, we're going to bring them back right on January 4th instead of waiting for the semester break. So if we can accommodate their request early, we'll do that.
Yeah, it's something, that, you want to have a game plan in these uncertain times, Cal, because of the fact that right now we're through the 20th of, no high school education statewide. Districts make the choice about K through 8 in that regard. Who knows what's going to happen, say, on December 21st, let alone the first Monday after the new year, or whenever Zeeland schools resume for the second semester, whether or not it's going to be all virtual, mixture, we just don't know right now.
Yeah, and I've had, I called every building this morning to try to get a feel for where we are and what parents are thinking, what teachers are thinking, what our numbers look like. And we're the healthiest we've been since about the second week of school right now. But the community numbers are some of the highest they've been. So that makes decisions on whether or not we're in school for remote or in person, difficult because of all the different factors that there are. We're leaning towards being in school on January 4th. And the numbers stay low. And we were probably, there were, back up a little bit, there were 4 or 5 schools in our county that were in session before Zeeland was this last return. I was able to talk to them and they said, here's what we've experienced. We're seeing that parents are just helping they're keeping their kids home if they don't feel well. Staff are staying home if they don't feel well. People are wearing masks at school with faithfulness there. And they're social distancing. They're following every rule possible because we realize we need to do everything we can to stay in person. We want to be in person. Where we seem to disagree is the level of safety that has to be in place before it's okay to come back in person. So I think the encouraging note is that people are doing the right thing. And if that continues, I think we'll be in school on the 4th.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Wednesday, December 16th. I'm Gary Stevens. We're chatting with Zeeland School Superintendent Cal DeKuiper. You can join the conversation at 395-1450, 395-1450. Let's get to the phones. Good morning. You're on the line with Cal DeKuiper.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you catch the kids that fall behind? What kind of study, or how do you catch those people to catch them up where they're supposed to be? Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Thank you very much, Cal. Hold on. You have to mute on.
There you
All
go.
right, now you're
Thank
off.
On the commercial there. Thank you. No, that's a question we sure ask a lot, and probably the least effective way to do it is to repeat a grade. We think the best way to do it is one-on-one education or small group education. For example, in reading, when there are a number of factors, just as a good example, there's a number of factors and different things that you look at on, am I a good reader? And rather than repeating the 10 things that are those indicators, if there are 3 or 4 that you're struggling in, let's key in on those 3 or 4. So in the past, teachers would work one-on-one. We actually use some of our software now and have them listen and decode and then read back to it. And that will tell us and kind of speed the process up so that the teachers can kind of fine tune that. In a case like this, where I think most students in a class are going to be somewhat behind because remote learning just is not as effective as in person, we may need to look at particular units for a grade level to repeat or parts of subjects. But that's going to be our challenge going forward, is what are the critical pieces? So maybe we can't drill way down. And if we're going to pick a particular study in history, rather than hit every single detail, we hit the really critical pieces and then speed the process up. So that's coming at us, and we know that, and that's part of the things that our curriculum people are looking at.
Quick question.
Yep.
I've been getting some emails from some union groups, teacher union groups, saying teachers need to be near the front of the line to get the vaccinations. Do you agree that maybe the educators need to be up front, or because the fact that, for the most part, COVID-19 strikes us older folks, not as many kids?
Yeah.
There's arguments both ways.
Yeah, and fair question, and I'm pretty steadfast in what I believe on this one for a number of reasons. I think they should be up in the front, the people who are teaching the kids in the classrooms and face-to-face with them working. And the reason is two parts. When schools are in session, parents can work and businesses can run at a more full speed because their employees are there. The parents aren't trying to figure out what to do with daycare. So I think we're such a huge part of the stability of a community and kind of a focal point of that. And then secondly, teachers are susceptible because we have so much evidence of kids all the way down to preschool that are COVID positive. And so I know that, and if we can get those teachers to be somewhat protected, then school will stay in session. Kids will learn, the community will thrive. I think it's just a key piece of the puzzle.
And another thing, and Bill Simonson probably will bring it up. He's of the opinion, the huge show 3 to 6 on weekdays here on WHTC. He's of the opinion why our high school athletics and maybe extracurricular activities in general sort of being pointed out as you can't have them right now during this current health situation. He's of the opinion it can be done safely. Others say, no, it can't be done totally safely as well. It is a tough question to try to answer there, Cal.
Sure. Again, it's challenging to think through these, and I've thought through this one a lot as well. So we're somewhat criticized when we run remote, but still offer programming like that. So Zeeland Recreation, for example, with 160 programs, we've had to close some of them, maybe some of the large group exercise programming. But if I have a youth basketball program where there's 10 kids, the 10 kids are all in the same grade at the same elementary school. We don't let the parents come to practices, but at least it's a real small bubble. So the mental health and the being connected to school is also important. So think about a high school with 2,000 kids in passing time. That's a pretty big bubble of people gathering next to each other. But if we could run our theater program, is such a compliment to Director Miller at Zeeland High School. He ran the theater program. Instead of having a production with 50 people, he ran a whole bunch of small ones of 5 and 6 kids, kept the bubble small so they could still do it.
With that, Cal DeKuiper, thank you very much for joining us today, Superintendent of Zeeland Public Schools. Wish you and your family well, a blessed and safe holiday season. Look forward to chatting with you again next month.
Yeah, likewise for you. I always appreciate being here.
Thank you very much, Cal DeKuiper on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.